Hello Year 9, it's Mrs. Purcell. To get us started, I want us to write about possessive apostrophes. So we've got these 4 statements here and they're all about our play and Inspector Calls. Let's have a quick look at the rules in the yellow box. So if the word is singular, the apostrophe goes before the S. So that is Eve's book. If we had no apostrophe there, it would sound like there are 2 Eves. Number 2. If something belongs to more than one person, the apostrophe goes after the S. Those are the girls' books. It's almost like you can pronounce it girls is, but we say girls. Normally there would be an S apostrophe S, but we get rid of that final S because there's already one there. It just looks messy. Finally, if the word is a collective, so it's already a plural, the apostrophe goes before the S. These are the children's books. Okay? Right, there are some sentences there for you. Can you please write them out and put the apostrophes where you think they need to go? Pause the video now. Okay, let's look at the answers. So the first one, Mr. Burling's factory pays the workers very low wages. The apostrophe goes before the S in Burling's, as the factory belongs to Mr. Burling, and obviously there's only one Mr. Burling. We don't need to put an apostrophe anywhere near workers because there's nothing in the sentence that belongs to them. Number 2. Gerald's family has a higher reputation than the Burlings. This time it's the family that belongs to Gerald, hence he has the apostrophe, and the Burlings here are plural because there's more than one Burling, so no apostrophe is needed. Number 3. Eric is annoyed by Mrs. Burling's overprotective attitude towards him. Again, the apostrophe is at Burling's because it's Mrs. Burling's attitude, so it's the attitude that belongs to her. Finally, the factory workers' rights were not protected back in the early 1900s. So you can say this as the factory workers' rights were not protected. So we will have the apostrophe after workers. So today we'll continue reading our play and we're going to make links between the context and the events. So specifically in today's context we'll be looking at class struggles. And this is in order to develop ideas for Assessment Objective 3, which is all about context. There's a part of the assessment objectives in the GCSE which is purely context, and if you don't mention it then you don't get those marks. And we're going to do this by reading about Gerald and Daisy Renton or Eva Smith's relationship and analysing it. I'm going to give you a bit of information about Daisy Renton and Gerald. I'd like you to make some notes, so please write at least 3 things that you learn from this. So in Act 2, Priestley reveals key details related to Gerald's affair with Eva Smith, also known as Daisy Renton. The relationship is interesting to consider because it involves someone from the upper class and someone from a working class background. Priestley uses Gerald to attack the upper classes of post-war Britain. He presents Gerald as an attractive chap and well-bred, so these are direct quotes from Priestley, which could be useful to memorise. Although he first appears very polite and respectable, as the play moves forward, Priestley reveals Gerald's true nature. This class of people were still capable of questionable behaviour. However, they were often able to avoid facing consequences because of their wealth and family reputation. The same social rules didn't apply to them as they could throw money at the situation and make it disappear. Here are some words from today's extract which you may not know. If you don't know them, can you write the word out and its definition? Pretenses is pretending something is true. Inquiry is an investigation. Being notorious is being famous for something bad. Rogues are dishonest and immoral men. Gallant means brave. As last time, I'm going to have the extract showing whilst we're also listening to the audio, but the audio might be a little bit different to the extract, so please make sure that you are quoting from the extract. The PDF is also attached to your homework. So, the extracts that we'll be looking for today are on the PDF pages 29 to 37. As we are reading, I'd just like you to complete one of these tasks. So you are either writing down 2 quotations which present the idea that Gerald was not loyal to Sheila, or you're writing down 2 quotes which show that Gerald enjoys using his wealth to act like a hero, or finally you could be making notes on Gerald's character and telling us what it reveals about wealthy upper-class men in the early 1900s.
Though it seems to me that we have more reason for taking offence. I realise, Inspector, that you have to conduct some sort of inquiry, but I must say that so far you seem to be conducting it in a rather peculiar and offensive manner. You know, of course, that my husband was Lord Mayor only 2 years ago, and that he's still a magistrate.
Mrs. Burling, the inspector knows all that, and I don't think it's a very good idea to remind him.
It's crazy. Stop it, please, Mother.
Yes. Now, what about Mr. Burling?
He's coming back in a moment. He's just talking to my son, Eric, who seems to be in an excitable, silly mood.
Really?
I'm afraid he may have had rather too much to drink tonight. We were having a little celebration here.
Isn't he used to drinking?
He's only a boy.
No, he's a young man. And some young men drink far too much.
And Eric's one of them.
Sheila!
I don't want to get poor Eric into trouble, but this isn't the time to pretend that he's not used to drink. He's been drinking too much for the last 2 years.
It isn't true. Gerald, say it isn't true.
Well, Mr. Croft?
Actually, I've never seen much of him outside this house. But, well, I have gathered that he does drink pretty hard.
And this is the time you choose to tell me?
Yes, of course it is. That's what I meant when I talked about building up a wall that's sure to be knocked flat. It makes it all the harder to bear.
But it's you and not the inspector who's doing it.
But don't you see? He hasn't started on you yet.
If necessary, I shall be glad to answer any questions the inspector wishes to ask me. Though naturally I don't know anything about this girl.
We'll see, Mrs. Burling.
I've been trying to persuade Eric to go to bed, but he says you told him to stay up.
That's right, Mr. Burling.
Why?
Because I shall want to talk to him.
I can't see why. But if you must, then I suggest you do it now. Have him in and get it over, then let the lad go.
I'm sorry, but I can't do that yet.
Now look here, Inspector.
He must wait his turn.
Inspector, I've told you before, I don't like your tone, nor the way you're handling this inquiry. And I don't propose to give you much more rope.
You needn't give me any rope.
No, he's giving us rope so that we'll hang ourselves.
Sybil, what is the matter with that child?
Overexcited. Well, come along, Inspector. What is it you want to know?
At the end of January last year, Eva Smith had to leave Millwoods because Miss Burling compelled them to discharge her. And then she stopped being Eva Smith and looking for a job and became Daisy Renton with other ideas. Mr. Croft, when did you get to know her?
What? Gerald?
Where did you get the idea that I did know her?
It's no use, Gerald.
You gave yourself away as soon as I mentioned the name Daisy Renton.
Of course he did.
All right. I met her first sometime in March last year, in the Stalls Bar of the Palace. I mean the Palace Music Hall here in Brumley.
Well, we didn't think you meant Buckingham Palace.
Sheila, you've said your piece. You're obviously going to hate this, so why on earth don't you just leave us to it?
Nothing would induce me. I want to understand exactly what happens when a man says he's so busy at the works that he hardly has time to come and see the girl he's supposed to be in love with.
In the Stalls Bar at the Palace Variety Theatre.
I happened to look in one night, and as the show wasn't very bright, I went to the bar. It's a favourite haunt of women of the town.
Women of the town? I think it would be much better if Sheila didn't listen to this story.
You're forgetting I'm supposed to be engaged to the hero of it. Go on, Gerald. You went into the bar, a favourite haunt of the women of the town.
Oh, I'm glad I amuse you.
Come along, Mr. Croft. What happened?
I didn't propose to stay long. But then I noticed this girl. My God. Sorry, I've suddenly realised, just taken it properly, that she's dead.
Go on, Mr. Croft.
She looked young and fresh and altogether out of place there. And obviously she wasn't enjoying herself. Old Joe Meggerty, half drunk and goggled-eyed, had wedged her into a corner with that obscene fat carcass.
There's no need to be disgusting. And surely you don't mean Alderman Meggerty?
Of course I do. He's a notorious womanizer, as well as being one of the worst sots in Brumley.
Well, really? Alderman Meggerty? I must say, we are learning something tonight.
Well, go on, please, Mr. Croft.
The girl saw me looking at her and gave me a glance. That was nothing less than a cry for help. So I went across and told Meggerty that the manager had a message for him or something like that. Got him out of the way. And then told the girl she'd better let me take her out of there.
Where did you go?
To the county hotel, which I knew would be quiet at that time of night. All she wanted was to talk. A little friendliness.
She talked about herself?
Yes. She told me her name was Daisy Renton, that she'd lost both parents, that she came originally from somewhere outside Brumley. She also told me that she'd had a job in one of the works here and had had to leave after a strike. She said something about a shop too, but wouldn't say which it was. And she was deliberately vague about what happened. I couldn't get any exact details about her past life, but what she did let slip, though she didn't mean to, was that she was desperately hard up, and at that moment was actually hungry. I made the people at the county find her some food.
And then you decided to keep her as your mistress?
What?
Of course, Mother. It was obvious from the start.
I discovered she was going to be turned out of the miserable back room she had. A friend of mine had gone off to Canada for 6 months and given me the key to a set of rooms and asked me to keep an eye on them and use them if I wanted. So I insisted on Daisy moving into those rooms, and I made her take some money to keep her going there. I want you to understand, Inspector, that I didn't install her there so that I could make love to her. I made her go because I was sorry for her, and I didn't like the idea of her going back to the Palace Bar. I didn't ask for anything in return.
I see.
Yes, but why are you saying that to him? You ought to be saying it to me.
I suppose I ought, really. I'm sorry, Sheila. Somehow
I know. Somehow he makes you.
But she became your mistress?
I suppose it was inevitable. She was young and pretty and warm-hearted and intensely grateful. I became the most important person in her life.
Were you in love with her?
Oh, I really must protest.
Why should you protest? It was you who turned the girl out in the first place.
I only did what any employer might have done. And what I was going to say was that I protest against the way in which my daughter, a young, unmarried girl, is being dragged
And
into
it was
this whole
I
thing.
who had the girl turned out of her job at Millwoods. And I'm supposed to be engaged to Gerald. I'm not a child father. I've a right to know. Well, Gerald, were you in love with her?
It's hard to say. I didn't feel about her as she felt about me.
Of course not. You were the wonderful fairy prince. You must have adored it.
All right, I did for a time. Nearly any man would have done.
That's probably about the best thing you've said tonight. At least it's honest. Did you go and see her every night?
No, I wasn't telling you a complete lie when I said I've been busy at the works. We were very busy. But of course I did see a good deal of her.
I don't think we want any further details of this disgusting affair.
I do.
It wasn't disgusting.
It's disgusting to me.
Yes, but after all, you didn't come into this, did you, Mother?
Inspector, is there anything else you want to know that you ought to know?
Yes. When did this affair end?
I can tell you exactly. In the first week of September, I had to go away for several weeks on business. By that time, Daisy knew it was coming to an end, so I broke it off definitely before I went.
How did she take it?
Better than I'd hoped. She was very gallant about it.
That was nice for you.
No, it wasn't. She told me she'd been happier than ever before, but that she knew it couldn't last. Hadn't expected it to last. She didn't blame me at all. I wish to God she had now. Perhaps I'd feel better about it.
She had to move out of those rooms.
Yes. She'd saved a little money during the summer. Didn't want to take any more from me. But I insisted on a parting gift of enough money to see her through to the end of the year.
Did she tell you what she proposed to do?
No, she refused to talk about that. I got the idea that she thought of leaving Brumley. Did she?
Yes. She went away to be alone, to be quiet, to remember all that had happened between you.
How do you know that?
She kept a rough sort of diary. She felt there'd never be anything as good again for her. And she said she had to go away and remember, just to make it last longer.
I see. Well, I never saw her again. And that's all I can tell you.
It's all I want to know from you.
In that case, well, I'd like to be alone for a little while. I'd be glad if you let me go.
Go where? Home?
No, I'll just go out, walk about for a while, if you don't mind. I'll come back.
All right, Mr. Croft.
Just in case you don't come back, Gerald, I think you'd better take your ring with you.
I see. Well, I was expecting this.
I don't dislike you as I did half an hour ago, Gerald. In fact, in some odd way, I rather respect you more than I've ever done before. I knew anyhow you were lying about those months last year when you hardly came near me. And now at least you've been honest. And I believe what you told us about the way you helped her at first, just out of pity. And it was my fault, really, that she was so desperate when you first met her. But this has made a difference. You and I aren't the same people who sat down to dinner here. We'd have to start all over again, getting to know each other.
Now, Sheila, I'm not defending him, but you must understand that a lot of young men...
Don't interfere, please, Father. Gerald knows what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. But I'm coming back, if I may.
All right.
As always, you may have different quotations from me, and that's fine. These are the ones that I found. A quote which presents the idea that Gerald was not loyal to Sheila is, "I became at once the most important person in her life." This shows that not only was Gerald having an affair with Daisy Renton, but that they were so close he allowed her to fall in love with him and to rely on him for almost everything. We can infer that not only did he treat Sheila badly, but he also toyed with Daisy's feelings, which was also a very cruel thing to do. Another quotation comes from Mrs. Burling. "I don't think we want any further details of this disgusting affair." Here, their relationship is outright referred to as an affair. It's interesting to note that Mrs. Burling would rather not talk about it in order to presumably save face than want to know exactly how this man hurt her daughter and subsequently her whole family. A quote which shows that Gerald enjoys using his wealth to act like a hero is, "I insisted on Daisy moving into those rooms and I made her take some money to keep her going there." This shows that he is providing Daisy with a level of security which she is unable to provide for herself due to her economic background and the bad luck she'd had by getting fired from her last 2 jobs. By the time Gerald meets her, she became, in his words, a woman of the night, so a prostitute. This shows how truly desperate she was and how much of a difference a place to live and some money would have been for her. Finally, Sheila describes him as, "You were the wonderful fairy prince." This metaphor is very powerful as Sheila is inferring that he swooped down like something out of a fairy tale and helped her. He did this as he clearly enjoyed playing the role of the hero. However, there is a massive imbalance of power in their relationship, as Daisy clearly needed him for her basic necessities. Plus, Gerald was always engaged to Sheila and had no intention of crossing class boundaries and leaving Sheila for Daisy. He was just having some fun with her. It is important to note that the class divide between Gerald at the very top and Daisy, an out-of-her-luck prostitute, was so large that there is no way he could have ever married her. Even if he wanted to, he would most likely have been disowned by his entire family. The social expectations were too strong. Therefore, he truly took advantage of this girl, as no concrete relationship could ever happen between them. Okay, I'd like you to do a Venn diagram of Gerald's viewpoint and experience of the relationship and how it differs from Daisy's, and we learn about Daisy's viewpoint through the inspector. So make sure that section in the middle shows any similarities and on either end shows their differences. As a challenge, can you add quotations to the Venn diagram to back up your points? Okay, pause the video now. I'd like you to write at least one piece paragraph on how Priestley presents Gerald's true character to the audience in this scene. So for your point, tell us what Priestley shows about his true personality. Your quotation, if you can embed it to make it flow better, that would be great. For your explanation, please try to write at least 2 things that the quotation could suggest. For your zoom in, either tell me about a specific word and try and identify its word type, so is it a noun, verb, adverb, etc., or what is the intended effect of the device. So maybe, for instance, you're talking about fairy prince and the device there is a metaphor. And finally, this is really important, can you make a link to the early 1900s? So tell us what Priestley is trying to tell us about the highest men in society. So please relate all this back to class. So your challenge there is Priestley is presenting Daisy Renton as the complete antithesis, so opposite of Gerald. What comment is Priestley making on society by doing this? Pause the video now. Okay, for your review exercise, we've got these 3 statements here. What I'd like you to do is choose the one that you most agree with and write a sentence explaining why you agree with the statement. So be specific about Gerald's actions when you are talking about it so you can really pull apart his actions. Use the word because to explain your point of view. I'm going to read the 3 statements and it truly is up to you which one is correct. There's no right or wrong answer here, it's just how you back it up. So A, Gerald is simply a young man trying to enjoy his life. Any man, no matter what class, would have done the same with Eva or Daisy. B, Gerald purposefully uses his high-class status to get what he wants. He manipulates people weaker than him to get what he wants. And C, Gerald is a product of a very strict class system. Because his family have always had wealth and power, he uses it to enjoy his life as much as possible. He has never had to think about consequences. Once you have finished, can you please email your work to your teacher? Well done, Year 9. Goodbye.